Hello, my name's Dr. Rebecca Carey. I'm from the University of Tasmania in Australia, and I'm standing in front of Australia's national research vessel called the RV Investigator. And we're using this ship here in Tonga for 34 days to understand the 2022 eruption of Hunga Volcano. That was the volcano that impacted the telecommunications cable on the seafloor, as well as produced ashfall and, of course, the devastating tsunami. So we'll be on this ship. We're a group of 22 different scientists, some from Tonga, New Zealand, the US, Australia, and Japan. And we'll be here to work together to use this ship and all of its operational equipment, such as dredgers and sleds and cores, in order to study the products of the eruption which are on the seafloor around the Hunga volcano. The results from this voyage, or the outputs from this voyage, include a lot of data that we'll be providing to the Tonga Geological Services, and that data includes maps of the seafloor and other types of seafloor images of the biological communities that are sitting on the seafloor around Hunga. So we're supplying that to the Tongan government through the Tonga Geological Services. In terms of science, we're hoping to understand the undersea sediment flows that were produced after this eruption. So the eruption the eruption occurred, and these underwater dense sediment flows occurred. And those sediment flows really devastated the underwater biological communities. And so 3 years later, after the eruption, we're hoping to go back to survey some of those communities just to see how they're recovering. The other outputs we're hoping to achieve are to understand why this eruption of Hunga volcano was so powerful. Our current models can't explain the power of this eruption. It was absolutely unprecedented. We've not seen an eruption like this in modern times. And so our research will also help us to understand what drives really powerful eruptions of volcanoes like Hunga. And we'll use that information to inform the hazard and risk assessments for many, tens to hundreds of submarine volcanoes that sit around the Pacific Rim of Fire, north and south of Tonga, Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. We are currently working with Earth Sciences New Zealand to provide us with daily updates of volcanic activity, and those daily updates of volcanic activity are going to be supplemented by any seismic activity that the Tonga Geological Services recognise. But it's my understanding that the volcano has essentially zero seismic activity at the moment. There's also no other indicators of precursors for eruptions. There's no bubbling, there's no discoloration of water within the actual summit of the volcano. And so we feel it's very safe to access the caldera, or the volcano's summit. The challenging thing is that this ship is very large, and we want to get quite close to the islands of that volcano. And so we're going to have to be quite careful about making sure that our depth sensors are working properly, such that we're not getting too close and put the ship at risk. Subaerial volcanoes, those are the ones that are on land. We've got a really good understanding of how those volcanoes erupt, and based on past eruptive history, what we can expect in the future. But for volcanoes under the ocean, rarely do we get to see that volcanic activity unless the volcanoes erupt very powerfully, in the case of Hunga volcano. So in risk assessments that are prepared by geological surveys, those risk assessments associated with eruptions and tsunamis, they're very well developed because we understand on-land behaviour. We don't understand the hazards associated with submarine volcanoes. So we're trying to understand what those hazards are for Hunga, and to relay that information to the Tongan government to help with resilience to volcanic hazards and tsunami hazards. But our findings are actually going to be very useful for our Pacific Island neighbours of New Zealand, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, because there are also tens to hundreds of submarine volcanoes that sit around their nations. And those volcanoes, the risk isn't known, and so the risk isn't included into hazard assessments. Using the ship to its absolute maximum capacity. If you look on the back deck is absolutely full of all of these bits of equipment that we use for science. So we'll be dredging the sea floor to collect rocks. Those rocks tell us about the magma that drove this eruption, and that helps us to inform models of how this volcano erupted. We're also going to be taking 10-metre sediment cores, and the sediment cores really help us to establish kind of the temporal chronology of how that eruption occurred and the processes by which all of that ash got to the seafloor and was distributed around the seafloor. We've also got a towed camera, which is towed about 5 metres above the seafloor, and that's going to be doing our surveying of the biological communities. We've got data from 2022, after the eruption, where anything within about 50 kilometres of Hunga on the seafloor was pretty much destroyed. And so 3 years later we're going back and we're hoping to see some really vigorous signs of recovery of those biological communities. I would love to see our research translated into products that the Tongan community and other Pacific Island and nation communities can use. And so those products are things like the frequency of eruptions from this volcano. Does this volcano erupt powerfully every 10 years, every 100 years? Hopefully we'll be able to determine that. And are there any other volcanoes like Hunga in the Southwest Pacific that are in a stage where they could proceed to very powerful eruption? And if we can translate our fundamental research into those outcomes that the governments can use, that's a real win-win for science. Such a privilege to come to Tonga. The Tongan people are so welcoming, and the Tonga Geological Services staff have just been amazing for helping facilitate this research, because they recognise how important the data products are and how they can use the data products to inform risk assessments and hazard assessments. So we're very privileged to be here. We feel very welcome here. We're looking forward to delivering that data to Tonga. And we've also got a Tongan Geological Services staff, Mele Manu, on board. And so we're looking forward to learning more about Tongan culture and some of the activity of Tongan volcanoes over the past 150 years or so.
Well, this is an exciting day here at the wharf. This is the RV Investigator behind us. It's a ship owned by the Australian government working with the CSIRO. And it's only the third time that it's done an international voyage. And I'm pleased to say it's here in Tonga. So this is about collaboration on science with Tonga, understanding more about the 2022 natural disaster, but importantly collaborating with geoscience, the geohazards areas and organisations here. 58 crew on board, most of them their first time in Tonga. I'm sure they're going to add to the whole scientific understanding of how we protect our communities. It's also the University of Tasmania's key research project here. So we're really pleased to build those connections between Tasmania and Tonga. And I know that a lot of the scientists here that are on board will collaborate with some of the local scientists. And I know one is joining the ship as well. So it'll be a beautiful experience for everyone for the next 30, 45 days. Thank you.